Alright, you've been following this Land Cruiser build? It was quite a journey. The frame is done, the axles are done, and honestly, it's time to get the body on the frame. And actually, two things can happen now. One, it can go perfectly fine and everything aligns and everything is okay. Or something happens. When you look at the valve, you see it is pretty much hammered. So I actually marked the holes now.
But before that, let's start in the beginning. This frame, it's rough. It's been patched, welded, cursed.
Der Rahmen ist echt repariert worden. Das macht echt dreimal so viel Arbeit, als was normal war, weil das echt so ist.
And somehow still held together by pure spirit. But today, after countless hours of repairing it, it goes right back where it belongs.
Will everything go as planned? Probably not.
Will we give it our best?
You bet.
Hey guys, just a quick side note before we continue. Today I'm actually doing the voiceover myself. Normally my big brother takes care of this, but he is currently in the US, traveling through Georgia and South Carolina, mixing a bit of work with a short vacation. He also is at the sea, so I'm stepping up for him today. Usually you see me behind the camera and sometimes in front of it, but most of my work happens in the background. Either way, let's get into the video.
I make a little thinking break and think about what we do before we set the body on the frame in terms of what is easier now and what doesn't matter. We will get in the exhaust pipe and probably, yeah, that's mostly it. I also think we will get the transmission in without the engine because you can afterwards connect it without a problem, but the transmission is just easier to lift it from the top on the cross member, then get the heavy up. It's just heavy. That's our plan, and I think that is what we will do.
With that in mind, there are still a few things we need to do before we can actually lift the body onto the frame. First, we start with the brake hoses and lines. With the body off the frame, it's pretty easy to get a hold of everything. When we disassembled the 60, we also cut a lot of brake lines, therefore we need to replace them. Fortunately, these new copper lines are pretty easy to bend. Everybody knows this can be a pretty tedious job. Now we need to clean some threads for the remaining brake and fuel line mounts. After we finish that, we can connect the axle breather and get the exhaust ready. With more and more things attached, it finally starts to look like a real car again, which makes me pretty happy. Right before we can put the body back on, we need to put back in the transmission. Not going to lie, everybody who works on Toyotas just knows how heavy those transmissions are. Yeah, it's definitely not our favorite part.
So we got the transmission in before. I mean, it's easy to because you can get rid of the So because you can get rid of the radiator support on the 60 series, it's easy to get the engine in. But it's easier when you have the body off to get the transmission now in, and that's why we do it. Because when I would get it in afterwards, I would have to get out the stick and everything around it to fit it up there. And so it is just way easier if you have a bare frame like I have. And that's why we do it. I get the exhaust everything before in because as it is with the transmission, it's just easier to align everything now and get all the bolts in because this is easier to sit in the frame, and with the body on I can't sit in the frame. So yeah, that's why I do that. So we have now in all the brake lines, shock absorbers, handbrake cable, fuel lines, brake lines, axle breathers, steering box, the steering box assembly, so all the lines. I mean, now we actually can bolt the frame together in like 3 hours, and when the car is together it is like a day of work because everything is hard to access, or the parts itself, like the trans, it's just heavy when you lift it from the ground. I mean, so it was just easy to get it in. And yeah, just make your let's say, do it the easiest way you can. And afterwards it's not such a pain to get it together. That's just a tip from me.
Finally, we are so close. The body and the frame will be soon one again.
So I get now the body down. We have it aligned with the wheel arches, but we have to align it also sidewise. But I get now the body down, not down on the frame, but down that I see where the bolts are pointing, and then we will get the frame in the right position, and then we will get it on. What we do now is we try to align the frame. As you see, there is the bolt, there is the hole, and we get the frame sidewards. That's why the jack is under the axle, and it's always a little bit painful to align everything. We align the last bolts and the first bolts on the floorboards, and then it should sit more or less straight on the frame. Sure, we have to fine tune it, but it sits then. We will get lifted off afterwards again to get new body mounts in it, but for now, for the aligning thing, the old ones are good enough.
This is a very crucial step, otherwise the body and the frame don't align properly and we may run into some issues.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, good?
Yeah. No! We have to look for the shift linkage. It nearly hits the body.
That was a pretty close call. But with that cleared, we can continue to lower the body carefully until we sit on the body mounts. Finally, the body is on, but there's something very important we still need to do.
Okay, the body does align with the frame mounts. The 4 brackets in the middle of the frame, like 2 on the left side, 2 on the right side. I have to drill the holes for the body bolts. I pre-drilled them with like a 3mm drill, and they align with the 3mm drill. Now I have to mark the last 2 body mounts because I didn't have marked them before, because I didn't know where they are. When I disassembled the car, there was already, let's say, yeah, it wasn't good. I have to mark them, drill them too, and then it's actually time to get the new body mounts in and tighten the body to the frame. So in the back of the car, as we know, when you watch the episodes of the White Land Cruiser, there is a welding mess in here.
And yeah, I tried to cut it open, but look for yourself. Not really good news. It's pretty rusty and also some professional work done right there.
And actually the access holes for the rear body mounts, they were welded. There was no access hole, so we had to cut them. And the bolts were welded from underneath. Yeah. I marked the holes so I can drill it when we lift off the body again, and then we will get it on finally. So I actually marked the holes now. I tried to mark the holes with a way too big hammer. This one is finished, now the other one. And afterwards, lifting it off. I show you now why I have to drill the holes. Because all these body mounts I made myself, and they were so rusted out that I couldn't actually see where the holes were. So I knew when I attach them I have to align it first with the body and then drill it, because the body, as you know, is also heavily welded, and nothing is actually centered anymore, but Follow me. So, when I actually cleaned up my storage space, I found an old Toyota set of original body mounts, and they will be used now because they lay around for like 20 years now, and it's time, I think.
With the new body mounts, we can finally lower the body again. And it sits perfectly just like it should, but we need to adjust the lift a little bit.
Actually, I get the lift under the frame, so I can lift the entire car to tighten the rear and the most forward body mounts. And afterwards I have to do some things on the inside, but that is for all the frame now.
It's time to lift our little 60 again. With the 60 up in the air, we can finally start to tighten the body mounts, so the body is secured.
Fast. So we tightened all the body mounts. The next thing will be get the fuel tank in it, drive shafts and all the stuff I put out like nearly 9 months ago. So if we look now under the car, it looks, yeah, fabulous. I mean, if you look like the first 2 episodes of it, how rusty and everything was sprayed over, how it looked, how disgusting actually, and how it looks now, everything is nice and black and rust-free and sandblasted. It was worth the time.
Yes, it was. And now the 60 finally looks like a car again. But the next thing already waits.
So, the next thing we do is getting new brake discs on the front axle. We have a power shortage, what means the grid is down in the moment. So we have our handy dandy LED light, because no one here has power anymore, also not the neighbors. Could be because it is very icy and one of the cables failed. So yeah, we will work with our nice light. First thing we will tackle is get the hubs down, then open the wheel bearings so we can slide off our nice disc brake. We painted, I mean, the disc brake before was like optimized with an angle grinder, so we have to change it. And that's what we do now, and we will see how far we progress without power.
Yeah, who doesn't love to work in the dark? Anyways, let's start and hope the power will come back soon. And it looks exactly like we thought it would. Dirt and old grease everywhere, just like my mother-in-law. But we also need a chisel in a minute to take off the wheel hub.
If you do ask yourself why I opened it this way, because already someone closed it this way and I wouldn't get a nut on it. Afterwards we will grind it a little bit with the angle grinder so we can get a nut over it.
With the lock nut out of the way, we can finally take the hub with the brake disc off. Here is our new brake disc, waiting to be mounted. But before we can do that, we need to gently remove the old one. And now we are ready to install the new disc. Same as before, we put the disc back on the hub and assemble everything backwards. And of course, we use new seals and a new wheel bearing. After we grinded the old lock nut, the assembly is pretty much straightforward. Just be gentle when torquing down the bolt, they don't need 10 ooga-doogas with the impact. After carefully reassembling everything, we are done on the right side. Now I also need to do the left side, which is just pretty much copy and paste of the same procedures. Ta-da! One thing I have to show you is the front disc. When I changed the front disc on the left side, yeah, I saw that the disc itself is pretty thick and it's pretty good, but one thing that's definitely for sure is it was just rusted off. So what I mean with rusted off, you can see how old the disc itself was. Just take a look, I'll show you. So this is one of the discs. You can see the thickness is pretty good, but I hope you see it on camera. You can see how it became thicker because of the rust. So like the scarring on the disc itself. So yeah, you can definitely tell they didn't drive a lot with this car, more so it was standing and yeah, just rot away. And if they fixed something, they did it pretty badly, as you know, like in the front, like with the wheel arches and things like that. So yeah.
While my brother did the left side of the brake, I finished the rear axle, more or less finished it. So I finished the brake drums, the brakes, handbrake cables, all the brake lines, made the fuel tank ready to get in, put the bump stops on it, and actually what is missing now is what is missing is now is the steering link, needs to be connected to the steering box and the steering damper. The drive shafts are missing, we miss the engine. But mostly we are done. I mean, there are still a lot of small things, retighten that, torque that, and so on and so on. But the big parts are in, actually. And here we will finish the rest little parts of it, and then we put the engine in at some point to make it drivable. One thing I have to add, there will probably some leakage or something like that because the car was standing so long. And after I have the engine in, we will like drive with it 1,000 kilometers or so, just around, and just for fun. No, not for fun, just for looking if everything is fine. If after 1,000 kilometers nothing is leaking or is loose, there is a high probability that nothing will leak or will get loose. But sure, at some point something will leak, but for that, let's say, for that many work, it's actually okay.
So from across the shop, I could hear my brother struggling. Let's take a look what he's up to. So what are you doing?
Okay, there is one steering joint. It is a steering joint, I think. So if we go to the steering link, in front of the Land Cruiser, there we have one steering joint you actually can adjust. There is the actual pin, goes in here, choop. And then there is a feather and a bolt you can adjust, so you can adjust the pressure on this bolt, so on this, I would say, bolt joint. So you can actually adjust the play, but the guy who did it, wait, I have to search it, because the grease in there was so old and so rusty dusty, he just screwed it all the way in until that thing was just straight anymore. He couldn't move it. And then he put a nail in to secure it. And yeah, I will now polish all that because I have this one for sure not here. So we can actually make a drive when the engine is in, and I will order a new one. But we are in Austria and it will probably take 2 weeks to get a new one. The cool thing on the 60 series stuff is most of the things in these cars are actually made so you can actually overhaul it. It's the same with like the electric power motors for the windows. Actually, you can change the coils. I don't know a car where you can do that, probably on some old American stuff, but most of the stuff these days is just one use throwaway.
As teased before, now it's time to get the tank back in. We already prepped it, which means there is no fuel in it, and also the tank straps are in place, which makes things pretty easy. With everything in place, it was together in no time. But a little problem with the steering shaft cost us a lot of time.
We have the steering box in. It was a struggle. Sometimes it's a struggle, sometimes it is not. But on this car it was a struggle. So the steering box is in. The main problem was to get the steering shaft in. The steering shaft itself, yeah, that is just old car and it didn't match up. And we had to work with 2 people, me and my brother, to get it on. But now it is on and actually a step further to drive this car. We rolled that heavy sucker out. Without an engine, a Land Cruiser is actually very heavy to push, especially when there is not much air in the tires. So, the body is on the frame, everything is bolted down. The next thing I have to do is actually get the interior in. Seats, carpet, everything I took out to access the bolts. And yeah, then we just have to fit something in that big hole.
I can't wait to finally put back that mighty 2H. But before that, we reassembled the interior of the 60 series, which means we put back in the carpet, brackets and seats. I'm going to be honest here, I like the black and grey interior a little bit more, but hey, it is what it is. Also, don't mind the water pump housing and the brackets on the passenger seat.
So I show you something, and there is a little bit of chaos because we have a new shop and we are in the progress to bring everything there. Yeah, everyone who did this before know it's much work to all the tooling and whatever. So let's go. We already put away all the storage stuff, but you have to step a little bit over. There is the head of the 2H engine. There are the valve springs, push rods and everything. I ordered freeze plugs and an engine gasket kit. It took some time to arrive, especially the freeze plugs. I ordered them like 3 weeks ago, and now they are there. They called me, and we will get the engine back together and fit the thing back into the big hole. And why did we disassemble the engine? Because, I mean, if you didn't watch like the first episode where I teared everything apart, when you look at the valve, you see it is pretty much hammered. And also the rock arm is damaged, and we made the decision when I put it apart to just change the freeze plugs because they were rusted through. All the gaskets were old, and it was just overdue to replace all the gaskets and seals and all the, let's say, maintenance stuff. That's why it did so long, because if you order something for a 81 2H engine, it isn't as easy to get the parts as for a 2019 Mazda 3. So that is pretty much the end of the episode. I mean, the next thing will be the head. We will get everything together, hopefully drive soon. I mean, in the moment we actually can't drive because we're in Austria and the roads are salted like hell, and then the 60 will just rust away instantly. But when there is no salt on the road and the 60 will not disappear after a day of salt, we will make a test drive, and I already know everything will be fine. For sure, more or less. I mean, there could also be something. But in the next episode we have probably a little surprise, but you will see it then. Until next time, on the next episode of Wrenching!